Hey everyone, and welcome to part 7 of our top 50 movies of the decade of the 2010s. Make sure you check out the previous parts for the previous entries, but this episode is going to be numbers 20 through 16, so without further ado, here is number 20.
Number 20, Pixar movie. Let me double check. This is probably the highest. Yep, this is the highest. Wait, is it? Nope, not highest animated. There's a clue. But this is Toy Story 3. Such a fitting end for characters that I grew up with, and what it means to basically be there for somebody now that doesn't need you. So you did their job, and the fact that they're moving on means that that's okay. That's the way life goes. And how do you adapt to this new life? And yeah, this movie makes me weepy. There's parts of this that I remember seeing in the theater thinking they're not going to this place, are they? And it's got a great villain in Lotso, the bear, and his backstory. But it's Pixar throwing with their fastball. And I always have to rank it top of the Pixar list just for, you can't have it without the other two Toy Story movies, but I also feel like this is their strongest effort. And yeah, over the time, and Incredibles is always near the top of my list, but as time's gone on and I've gotten older, I have a lot of love for Toy Story 3.
Yeah, Toy Story 3 is surprisingly dark in places. It's a very fitting conclusion. So fitting, in fact, that I have not worked up the courage to bother seeing Toy Story 4 yet.
And I do, being that's on Disney Plus, and I know The Mandalorian just ended, so if you ended your Disney Plus membership, bah on you, but or boo on you, not bah. I'm not a sheep, but Toy Story 4 is really good. It's my second favorite Toy Story movie, because it does serve as the epilogue to this. That a lot of the lessons that are started or you think have had a conclusion are almost doubled down on in 4, and it's a lot of fun. Like it's a movie that, yes, it doesn't need to exist, but I'm happy that it does. And it's still a little fresh. It might settle in my top Pixar, but yeah, Toy Story 3 is still tops.
My number 20 is Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. This is the best of the trilogy for me. The first one was this pleasant surprise, and it was really solid, and then this just expanded on it in every way possible, and it is better in every single way. And like I said, the first one's still pretty good, but this is just complete next level. It adds so much more depth. Everything with Caesar is fantastic in this movie. Yeah, and then the effects. Oh man, like again, they were really good in Rise, but they went up a notch, even when I didn't really know if it was possible, because they were that good, and still is probably the benchmark for what effects can look like. And it's a crying shame they never got recognized in more places for that.
There is probably more further to go, but I suppose there is a point where once it's photoreal, like there's nowhere else to go. Yeah, there's nothing else to do with it. It's photoreal. Yeah. We're done. We've reached that pinnacle.
I think the challenge is getting to that point with things that we aren't familiar with, because these are apes. We know what apes look like. You can really not easily, but you can get that because you're basing it off something real. It's when we can get to that with something that we've got no real context for. That's the challenge, I think.
That would be One Cut of the Dead. Just a super charming movie that it is really hard to talk about because there is something about it that you want to experience when watching the movie, so it is best to go in cold and not really understand what that is. But it starts off very strange, but then something happens, and that's about all I'll say about it. But it is just such a fun, really cool idea for a movie with really great performances, and not really quite horror, but I think a lot of horror people would like it. But it's a very solid one that I definitely would recommend people check out if they haven't seen it yet. I know it's currently on Shudder. But
yeah, and you have to stick with it. You have to stick with it past that first 30 minutes, because you may be put off, but just stick with it.
Yeah, because that's actually one of the funnest things about it is I've had a couple of people that I recommended to that ended up watching it, and I think it's always fun to hear like their reactions to that kind of first 30 or so minutes where they're like, yeah, like for a while I was confused, like why is he recommending this movie? But then once it like clicks, it clicks, and it's a really interesting thing. I can't really think of too many other movies that kind of have that where something happens that makes you re-examine the whole thing, and then yeah, and then once you get behind beyond that, it becomes a movie that's about something else, but it's like also like stuff that I really like, and it's really cool.
Number 20 is Godzilla.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that big, beautiful bastard. Yes.
I'll stop. Okay.
Yeah. Godzilla. Yeah, I think we talked about this at length on the other countdown, but really awesome depiction of something that takes over the world in a way that we go, though this isn't ours anymore. And it is, I think that Gareth Edwards is incredible at filming scale because he really feels like a titan, like a behemoth, something that like doesn't belong on the surface of the earth, like something that should be buried.
Yeah, no, it feels like it genuinely something that is we can't comprehend. It really truly feels apocalyptic.
Yeah, it's like if the I don't know, like the Grand Canyon like was a living thing all of a sudden. Like when you see the Grand Canyon, you're just like, it's so massive, like your brain can't comprehend it. It looks almost like a painting. Like, and that's like what Godzilla is too. Like he's just so big. But he does a really good job because there are plenty of examples of movies where they're like, look at this big monster, and you're like, yeah, I guess it's big, but like the way he films it, it's just like, oh, I get it. Like he's like a planet.
My number 20 is Insidious. This was a big surprise for me when I saw it in 2010, 2011. This James Wan, who at this point, I'd seen his Saw movies, and the first Saw movie, this was his. And I think I might have seen his Doll movie at that point. I can't remember, but I went to see this not really expecting much. I saw it amusingly the same day as X-Men First Class, which is amusing because Rose Byrne's in both movies. And I've told the story before how when I saw X-Men First Class as the second movie, I was sitting there going, she looks familiar. I've seen her in something before. But Insidious is so playful. I mean, there's really good scares, really good jump scares. It's very inventive with all that stuff. But what I like about it is how it starts to play with this, or it create even its own mythology, and builds this whole kind of like set of rules around kind of this supernatural kind of how do I put it? It's kind of like when you read comic books, and like DC Comics, for example, has like all these various like rules. Like it has the green and the red and the rot in one end, but it also has the Speed Force in the other end. Like this basically creates its own movie version of one of those things where there's this thing called the Further, and it relates to demons and spirits and all these things. And I like how it establishes that, and I do kind of like some of the goofier characters that it introduces. Some people get turned off at that point in the movie, but I'm into it.
No, I'm with it. It's a bit camp, I think is the word I'd often use. But it's a lot of fun. And I think the campiness really offsets the horror, and it complements it really well. Yeah,
you got a good cast in there. You mentioned Byrne, you got Patrick Wilson, and Lynn Shay, of course, there, who feels like a bit of like a horror heritage, even though she had a small role in the original Nightmare on Elm Street, but it's more just because her husband's Bob Shay, who runs New Line Cinema, which was associated with a lot of these big horror franchises for a long time. So there's kind of a lineage there, a legacy there. So, but it's a really fun movie, and I like it more than the Conjuring movies. And I know that I'm kind of in the minority with that, but for me, the way this plays with everything, the way it kind of just goes, because The Conjuring's a really good, just sort of straight, here's a haunted house movie with some paranormal investigators. I feel that this actually kind of takes that idea and subverts it, and he did this first. He did this before he did his standard haunted house movie. And I don't mean that as an insult, I just mean in the sense that he played that movie very straight, and this movie's the one that has fun with the premise and just sort of mixes things up and does its own little twist on it.
It's a bit more creative, isn't it? No, I'm with you in that, though. I think this is better than the Conjuring movies.
Number 19, The Big Sick, the Kumail Nanjiani kind of biopic, if you will, about the relationship, the true life relationship with his wife, and how she comes down with this mysterious illness as they're dating, and ends up, becoming a part of her life while she's in the hospital and dealing with her parents. And it's a very sweet movie. It's a very, at times, I want to say troubling, because it's not quite troubling, but it's trying, I guess you could say, because there are moments in there where you feel for Kumail, as he's a bit in over his head, and I feel it has a lot to do with him. I mean, he did write it and he starred in it, but yeah, but he never looks like 100% the good guy throughout. Like there's always like there's flaws there and faults, and that's why you like him. And Kazan, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's related to Elia and Kazan and Kazdan. I mix those names up. But yeah, she's in the beginning before her character gets sick, and she's just as charming as Kumail, and you end up liking her a lot. And then if you know anything about the real Emily, that's pretty spot on casting. Like, they did a really good job there. But yeah, no, Kumail shines. The script especially is the heart of this movie, I feel, and you're with him on every twist and turn it takes.
Yeah, it's this is one that was surprising for me, because I probably never watched this, and you kind of made me watch it, and I was pleasantly surprised with just how touching it was. It was, I mean, it's technically a romantic comedy, but that is a disservice to it, because romantic comedy, comes with a lot
Not
of
this good.
a lot of connotations. That is not what this is. It's a genuinely sweet story of an oddball character kind of like becoming a part of someone's life, and it's really well done. Ray Romano's surprisingly pretty good in it as well.
She's very good. Holly Hunter, she's really strong. And then you have and I forget all of their names, but his comedian friends in it are also really good. But I know Bo Burnham's one of them, and he's pretty good. But yeah, no, I really love The Big Sick. It made an impression on me. I remember hearing about it, and then it had a slight theatrical run. So me and my wife went to go see it, and I was shocked with, like, it was one of the ones that it followed up with the hype, like it matched. I understood.
19 is Macbeth. This is a fantastically beautiful movie. The cinematography is incredible. It's a very quiet movie. It is still in the original Shakespeare, but there's a lot less of it. Like, they slashed like 70% of the dialogue. So there are long stretches of just silence, and it's all just in the acting. And
Hey! The more dialogue from Shakespeare you can cut, the better the overall product will be.
I mean, sure. I actually think that's what makes this somewhat more accessible to people, in that, yes, there is still that Shakespeare speech, but there's so much less of it that I think it's less off-putting. But like I said, it's a beautiful movie with a fantastic score. Yeah, I'd recommend checking it out if you're into the concept of Macbeth, and maybe you don't like the whole big monologues. They're pretty much all gone in this. There's maybe one. It's fantastic.
That would be Dread. Just man, like I always want to get into Judge Dredd, but I've never been crazy about the format. There's like it always feels like the stories are so short, which admittedly it's like kind of like an anthology magazine, so it's like smaller stories, but even like when you kind of read them all together, I don't know, maybe I haven't read the right ones, but it never really clicked with me. But he is such a cool character, and this is really great to see him get a movie that's not the 90s Sylvester Stallone one. But
I am the law.
Yeah. Have you guys done that on Ace yet? Or
we did actually. We did that as a bonus episode for Patreon.
That's gotta be fun. But I mean, it's just so cool. Like, I mentioned the Raid earlier on my list, and a lot of people are making comparisons to that because it is a similar format of hey, there's a bad guy at the top of this building, we got to make our way through it, but the action is so cool, and it's a shame we never really got a sequel, because man, it was really fun.
Number 19 is The Revenant.
Oh, okay. All right. A little bit of Tom Hardy mumbling, a little bit of beer, loving and some other stuff.
Maybe it's because I grew up in Canada, but it made me a little homesick seeing all that snow and bears. And no, I love the look of this film. I know it was a challenge to make because I think they only shot it at like a certain time of day, and each single day that they were shooting because they needed to have the light in a very specific time, or like the sun in a
Yeah.
very specific point during the day, and they had like a short window every single day to film or whatever, but really pays off. I think the look of the film, the adventure, the dread, and yeah, the bear scene, which is infamous, but like, boy, it's brutal.
Yeah.
And it gave Leo his Oscar finally, although which is it's tough because Tom Hardy's in it and he's clearly better, but
Yeah. No.
whatever, like,
Well,
it's
here's the thing.
give him the honorary Oscar.
I think Leonardo DiCaprio in this movie is fine, but he does kind of come across as an actor who's kind of trying really hard to be gruff, and then
He really is, and
and
like Tom Hardy's there, and he just looks like he lives in this world.
yeah, he looks so natural to the world, whereas Leo feels out of place. He feels like an actor. He feels like a Hollywood, boy trying to pretend to be this gruff guy in the past. And
This is going to get me the Oscar. I'm going to eat this liver.
And it almost feels like they gave it to him because he's been trying for years and we've never given it to him, and he's done a lot of good performances, rather than because he deserved it specifically for this movie. But I mean, whatever.
Yeah, I almost wish the roles were reversed, but I do really like Tom
Yeah.
Hardy in his role.
'Cause
He's
so-
great villain.
Because sometimes it goes up to a close-up of Leonardo DiCaprio and it just feels like he's trying so hard. Now, admittedly, I sound like I'm making fun of a lot of this. I do think the movie's great. It's shot beautifully. The
Yeah.
music's great. Like, there's a lot of things to love in this
Love
movie.
Great Christmas movie.
Oh yeah, it's a cheery Christmas time. My number 19 is raise some eyebrows for some people, although it's not unexpected of me, and that is The Dark Knight Rises. This is one that there's very few movies, typically for me, where I find myself defending something that a lot of the internet has decided is trash. But Dark Knight Rises is very much the one that I will go to bat for and say, no, you're all wrong. This movie is actually excellent. I'm not saying it's flawless. I'm not saying there's nothing to nitpick at. I'm not saying, Talia is not kind of iffy. Like, there's things, sure. But so much of this movie works. There's the character arc for Bruce is such a great story to me that plays upon not only its comic book influences and ideas. It takes a little bit from No Man's Land, it takes obviously a fair bit from Nightfall, it takes a fair bit from this and that and these various other things, but it also works on like a commentary on what Batman is as a character, a commentary on the because Batman mentality that the Batman fans and have kind of like built up over the years, and kind of Bruce's own hubris and Batman's hubris and what really makes Batman Batman. It's a story. It's funny that it is the third movie because it in very much, to me, in a lot of ways, actually succeeds in what the original concept for Batman Forever was supposed to do, and was to really kind of like have the character really reestablish to himself what it means to be Batman and be Batman for the right reasons. And I think on that level, it succeeds tremendously. And it has obviously the great action that Nolan does, the great music that Zimmer brings to the table, all those things. It's definitely the most comic booky of the three movies. And I kind of like the idea that it embraces its comic bookiness the more it goes. The Batman Begins starts where it does. Dark Knight, goes further with the Joker and further with some of that stuff. And then the third one's like, no, here's Bane and Catwoman, and here's Bane monologuing over the mic. And I'm a fan of the Bane voice, time to go mobile, all that stuff. I love it. So Dark Knight Rises for me is the capper in one of my favorite trilogies.
Number 18, the movie that proved me wrong, and now there's a trailer term for it. I call it getting Mad Maxed. When a trailer comes out that I think is going to be terrible, but then I go see the movie anyways, and I'm shocked with how much I enjoyed it. But that's Mad Max Fury Road. I know people might think it should be higher, but it's another one of those ones that's on the big screen I've only seen. I own it. I bought the Blu-ray, but I don't want to take away from that theatrical viewing, because just George Miller just bringing it. Like, it gets completely banana pants crazy at times. Like, there's a whole, like, it's essentially a movie that's a chase scene, right? Like, and you got these long rows of cars. You got a guy on a trampoline playing a flaming guitar that shoots fire, and you're like, this looks completely stupid and ridiculous. And as you're watching, you go, it is, but it's also very compelling. Tom Hardy as Max. Like I'm gonna finally admit this though. I haven't seen the Mad Max movies. Like I know of them, but this is the first one I had ever seen. And from what I hear, they're not as good as this one. Like they're fine, but this is like really George Miller's masterpiece when it comes to the character.
The Road Warrior is very much loved. The Road Warrior is worth seeing.
Yeah.
But much like this one, you don't have to see the first one to watch the Road Warrior.
Right.
You can just watch the Road Warrior. This is perfectly standalone. Like you don't need to know any much backstory about Max. It's just he exists. He's this wanderer of the wasteland, and ends up involved in what's going on. And it's all these practical stunts. It's all these, like, I mean, obviously there's some CG for stuff like storms and things like that, but like all the actual car stuff is for the most part practical stunt work, and it's really impressive. And it feels great to watch, and I hope he makes a sequel. He's been talking about it.
Me too. That'd be good. Because Mad Max, he lays like he doesn't lay himself, but he lends himself to movies like this that can be just standalone. And like, do I want to see what Furiosa's up to? Charlize Theron's character, sure. But if we can't get her, we can do something new, and it fits.
My 18, a bit of a different choice, more recent than some of the others on the list. This is The Incredibles 2. I mean, the first Incredibles is my favorite animated film of all time, and it's one of the best superhero movies of all time.
Which luckily is not a spoiler for this list because it was not this decade, so it's not like
which is why I felt safe mentioning that.
You've not spoiled a later entry, so because you're a bit of a chump. Sometimes you would do something with that, so I'm just.
Yeah, but I didn't. I mean, you could say I've spoiled things that won't be showing up on my list by saying this is the best of a trilogy, for example. But that's fine. But this here, it picks up pretty much right after that first movie, even though it's a good 10, 12 years later, however long it's been in real time, and it feels like it should have. It should take time getting back into it, but it just seamlessly just straight back in, hasn't skipped a beat. It's not quite as good as the first one, but it's got so much great character depth, an evolution on where those characters were in the first movie, and picking up from that and seeing the aftermath of these, that first adventure, especially for the kids. And animation's fantastic. It's one of Pixar's best recently.
My number 18, that will be a little movie you might have seen called Avengers. That was just Avengers, no Age of Ultron or anything.
Yes.
I mean it still stands out as one of the best Marvel movies. It was just like obviously kind of like seems old now, but at the time it was like, holy crap, they did it. Like they found a way to bring everything together and make a movie with all these different heroes and stuff, like combining and teaming up. And obviously you got the Joss Whedon influence on there, which is never a bad thing. And
Joss Whedon.
So much.
Who's Joss Whedon?
I did some show called Dollhouse. Who knows? But no, I mean, it's super fun. All the performances are great. Lots of really cool character moments. And again, I feel like throughout the list I talked about kind of the weird love-hate relationship you have with like the Disney and Marvel movies, where it's like, all right, yeah, this is really cool. I don't know if it's the best thing for cinema, like, but I mean, at the time though, it was, it still holds up on its own as a movie, as just being like, tons of fun and really cool. Like, you hate to be too fanboy-ish, but there's lots of like really great moments that do kind of make you want to go like, hell yeah, oh, that was cool. I'm glad they did that.
Next is number 18. That's Tomorrowland.
Oh, this is a ballsy placement for Tomorrowland.
I know, but it's so full of optimism and wonder and spectacle. I love the message of the movie. I think a lot of Brad Bird fans were really disappointed in this film because they were expecting, I don't know, something else. And I don't know what I was expecting. And I think because my expectations were kind of low, like I was just totally blown away by how positive and nice this movie is. And it kind of feels like an older Disney film, like an Escape from Witch Mountain type. And I miss those films. And I love the look of it. I love that whole World's Fair theme that they have going on. And yeah, really, really special, sweet movie with a nice optimistic message
Hey,
of I know our lives or this world is not great because of the things we've done, but it doesn't mean we can't do something, you know.
Hey, I'm with you. I like this movie a lot. I think it got a hard rap when it came out. Everyone was ready to jump on it and say it was a disappointment or whatever, and I don't know. I didn't see the disappointment. I saw it and thought, yeah, it's a bit in your face what it's doing at the end, but like I don't know, like it didn't seem to matter. It felt like it fit the tone of the movie to
Yeah,
me.
but the villain was the person who looked at it and said, "Well, I'm just going to give up." And the hero is someone who says, "No, we can dream, we can have imagination, we can work at this, and we can be better." And I like that message a lot.
My number 18 is Django Unchained, baby. This movie is absolutely wonderful. Quentin Tarantino, who I love, dearly as a filmmaker, it's breaking out the. What's funny about that is that it's barely it's not even like evening yet. It's still the afternoon, and Carter's breaking out the whiskey.
Hey, it's like 5 o'clock.
Breaking out the hearts.
Everyone knows that 5 o'clock is the accepted time to start drinking.
You're 3 minutes
That's why
early. 3 minutes.
Well, it's always 5 o'clock somewhere. Screw you.
Nonsense. But so this is the thing. I have maybe kind of a weird taste in Tarantino in the sense that my favorites of his tend to be the ones that are more adventure-y and like pulpy action movie. My favorite Tarantino movie is Kill Bill, and I'm counting that as one movie for the record. Like Django Unchained might be my second favorite. It might actually, because I think there's something about the hero's journey of this movie, and obviously it's set in this time period with these issues. You've got a slave who kind of rises up and becomes a hero. Like it's dealing with all these things, but it makes so many of its points with great humor. Both Jamie Foxx and Christoph Waltz are fantastic in this. DiCaprio's good as a villain. It's like a great hero's journey on top of being like sort of baiting satire and having like great action moments, and just there's all these little cinematic flares that Tarantino loves to put in, but it comes off as just this really well-rounded package. Some people think it goes on too long and that there's like sort of like more endings than it needs.
I'm shocked.
I do not have that issue. Thank you very much. I love it, and I think it has a heart. There's just I'll just say the words of Wiedersehen. If anyone who's seen the movie will know what moment I'm talking about, which I think really pays off what it's doing. Love Django Unchained. It is a cinematic delight. And when it comes to what I consider a good popcorn movie that is like just this ride, this is what I want. Screw your Michael Bay nonsense. This is the craft of someone like Tarantino doing a movie like this. Not that Michael Bay's done a movie like this, but the craft of Tarantino doing something that, again, forgive the word pulpy because Pulp Fiction, but that's what I want, because he's excellent. He's a master craftsman at doing this kind of thing.
Number 17, very serious movie. One I didn't really think that I was going to like as much as I did. But it is Whiplash. Damien Chazelle, Miles Teller, J.K. Simmons. Story about obsession and drive, and maybe those are good if properly focused, but can also be a detriment. And just it's the most I think I've ever liked Miles Teller in anything. And he's kind of not that he's unlikable, but he's a type. He's this guy that's very focused on becoming a jazz drummer, and he's going to do that no matter what the cost is. And if that means he comes up against this abusive, jazz teacher at a music conservatory, and then he's gonna try to outlast this guy and prove him wrong. And great performances out of Simmons, out of Teller, the editing, the music, sound design, just everything part of this movie. It adds up to me a near perfect film. Um, Small appearance by Supergirl in there, which I think is funny when you go back and look that she has the spit role as his girlfriend. Paul Reiser is his dad. Is another. He's not in it very much, but he makes the most out of the scene. But yeah, and there is when you look at Chazelle's 3 movies at this point, there is an undercurrent of obsession and dedication to one's craft. It's there in La La Land. It's even there in First Man, although albeit different. But I like that. I feel like with a lot of directors working now, a lot of up and coming ones, they're kind of just taking jobs. And I feel like Chazelle has this point of view, and this is what he's going to get across. And it helps when you have people like, J.K. Simmons there, right, to put in these performances, or Ryan Gosling and the other two. But yeah, no, Chazelle's good for me, and it all started with Whiplash.
My 17 is Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. This is a coming of age comedy mostly, but as with the best coming of age comedies, there's some healthy dose of drama in there as well. This is obviously about 2 guys who become friends with a girl that's dying. It kind of not really his choice either. His mother's like, oh, go and be friends with her. She needs she's a bit lonely, whatever. And then it becomes this story of them becoming properly good friends and such on. It's a very funny film, and it's got a lot of heart, and it's not exactly unconventional. It kind of follows the beats that you would expect for what this movie is, but it does them so well, and all the dialogue and the characters are fantastic.
So then my number 17, that would be I Saw the Devil, which that's not just me talking about the times I podcast with you. It's also the name of a movie, which is very good. I believe Korean, I want to say. Yeah. So it's I always forget the director, but it's very good, and it's essentially it starts off with this serial killer who he like murders this woman that ends up being the wife of this guy who the whole movie is essentially the husband of his murdered wife getting revenge and tracking the serial killer down. But like what makes it really cool is he finds the killer early on, and he could easily get his revenge. He could kill the guy, turn him into the cops, but that's not satisfying enough for him. He wants to see him suffer, so he keeps letting him go just so he can continue chasing him down. And it hurts a lot of people in the way, but there's lots of cool action, like, and character moments and everything, and just a really like well thought out, like crazy intense movie. But yeah, I love it though. Really not much like it.
Yeah, it's it's very much looks at the price of revenge, and kind of like how dark the main character becomes because of what he's doing. He essentially becomes the killer by doing what he's doing. So it pokes at some of those things. It's also kind of darkly funny in places, because Korean cinema is really good at inserting comedy in a way that I don't think Western cinema is.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, there are these like weird little bits of like dark humor kind of spread throughout.
Haters gonna hate this one. It is Dunkirk. Okay, it's no secret that I love war movies. Like, I really do. I am a veteran. They are a weakness of mine. They've always been, though. I've always loved. I don't know. I was a big fan of like the MASH TV show growing up, and I love war movies, and I love tasteful war movies. And I think this one is so tasteful and so tense. And there's a particular scene on a ship where was a real nightmare for me to watch, and a nightmare that I've had often. And it is depicted in a way that's that's terrifying. And I really think the movie's special, and I know Nolan fans are disappointed, much like Brad Bird fans were disappointed in Tomorrowland. You'll get your Tenet and be happy again, but this movie was made for me.
That makes your list unique, right? Because
Yes.
you might be
I'm pretty sure my list is very different from everyone else's list.
I don't know. There's been a lot of overlap, but I do think you'll be alone in Dunkirk. I think you'll be the only one who has that, out of anyone.
Yes, that's okay.
My number 17 is Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, which for the second time on this top 50, me and Connor have got the same movie in the same slot. What's actually funny is that at the time of recording, I've actually edited and put out the first few episodes of this. Me and Tim actually shared a number at one point, and I didn't realize it when we were recording because I didn't have my list in front of me. So I didn't know that he had a movie at the same spot.
What number was it? Do you know?
Oh, I can't remember. I can't remember what movie it was. It was a horror movie, I think. But like, but yeah, that's twice now. So we both had the 123, and now we both have Me and Earl and the Dying Girl at number 17.
17.
So that's weird. Out of all the movies we could be picking of the decade, it's weird that that's now 2 in the one list. But yeah, Me and Earl and the Dying Girl is a wonderful story. It's it's the only movie I could think of where the main character talks about Werner Herzog movies and how much of an influence that is on him. You get Nick Offerman in there. You've got a character who has a real journey of trying to be an angsty teenager, and then the heart kind of grows from there, and it's about him not wanting to have to deal with the fact that someone he's kind of fallen in love with is dying. And it's not that. Actually, I'll rephrase that. It's someone that he's dying, he's falling in love with, because he knows she's dying before he falls in love
From
with
the
her.
start of the movie,
Yeah.
that's kind of the crux.
And how he treats his friend Earl, because in like their relationship, like all of that stuff really goes. Like I love. There's a track from Brian Eno that's used, from towards the end of the movie that's just played at this big climactic moment, and it's one of those moments where every so often there'll be a movie that has like a scene or like just a sequence, like one little chunk that really sticks out to me as being one of my favorite moments of cinema, right? And one of my favorite moments in this case of the decade. And that Brian Eno, however you pronounce his name, that track playing as he shows the, because he's tasked with making like a movie about this girl, over, that's kind of what he's told to do, but like the kids in the class, like, hey, you make movies and stuff, you care about movie making, like, do you want to like do a little thing you can show her, from everyone that knows her, and when he reveals this, and I know this is very spoiler to say that he does this movie and eventually he reveals it, but when the movie's revealed and this track plays over it, is one of my like sort of like everything in the movie builds to that moment, and it hits so perfectly. That I love. And what's so great is that it actually makes this great little moment at the end as well, as this great little final point that it makes that it didn't even necessarily build up to that much, that it also feels like a perfect little thing, because the whole point of the moment at the end, again without spoilers, is that it is unexpected and it kind of plays into itself perfectly. And I was heavily impressed by this. This is kind of like, you're someone who loves lots of coming of age stuff, and obviously this is a kind of sadder coming of age story than most because it deals with death, and normally we don't necessarily get that in coming of age stories, but it's a very valid thing because some people do have this early in their life where someone dies. Like sometimes it happens when you're in school, it just does.
Yeah.
And I think this was a perfect little tale of that.
That was 17. This is number 16, and this is Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I think the only Edgar Wright movie I have on this list. I know Pete's making a little bit of a face. I just love this movie. It's got the video game stuff, but I just love the structure of it, how it builds to each different evil X that Scott Pilgrim has to face to win the heart of Ramona Flowers, I think. It's been a while.
No,
I do love this movie though. It's just Ramona. But yeah, and just how he how he deals with this, and maybe not in the best ways. The supporting cast is solid. You have Alison Pill as part of his band. You have I forget her name, but she played Knives. She later goes on to Glow. She's a lot of fun in this because she's his younger girlfriend that's super obsessed with Scott. And then all the evil X's, the cameos that happen. You got Chris Evans. You got Brandon Routh. Brie Larson shows up through here, which is another one to go back and look at what her career's been and see that it started You know, this is the first time I really remember seeing her, and it's just a whole lot of fun. That's what it comes down to. It's super rewatchable. This is the one I catch myself, you know, getting in the mood for. Like, hey, I feel like watching Scott Pilgrim tonight, and we'll go through. Most I've ever liked Michael Cera, I think. Despite, I mean, I love Arrested Development, but it's never because of George Michael. It's just about every other character but him. But that's kind of his role on that show, right? And here, it's kind of hard to buy that all these girls are, you know, kind of throwing themselves at this guy, and it's Michael Cera, and that's weird. But once you buy into that, it works. Aubrey Plaza also is fantastic in this in her small scenes. But yeah, a lot going for it. Very stylish the way that it's edited and put together. The music's a lot of. Well, I think Beck did a lot of the music. Really is its own character. I hate saying that because it's kind of like a cliche about things. Like when people talk about Batman, they talk about Gotham's a character. But no, the music really is a character in this movie. It plays an integral role. Yeah, Edgar Wright, man.
My number 16 is Star Wars Force Awakens.
Yeah.
No, I do love this movie, and this is one of those where I was worried that after watching it a few times, I'd get, like, you know, not bored of it necessarily, but it would go down. And then, you know, I watched it again, you know, recently before the new one, and nope, still loved it just as much. Even the new one can't ruin that. It can't take it away. Because I think for the most part, it's in many ways it is a remake of the original Star Wars, and in some ways that really benefits it because it is essentially very standalone in its nature. Because of that, it's very easy to just watch without any sequels, and it kind of works. Sure, there's things it sets up, but it still works in every way, and it has some fantastic moments, some beautiful shots. The ties coming through the sunset, in particular, stands out. It's just full of moments and characters that I love. It's yeah, and Pete'll give me shit, but I don't care. It's got some great music too.
No comment.
Staying on that train, which, you know, the well, I don't know how to transition to that. My number 16 is Train to Busan. So yeah, like another again, this is Korean as well. I believe. I apologize. I know I always mix up countries, so I'm gonna make sure I'm saying the right one.
You know,
but
I feel bad because Tim tried to do a bit of a segue before that entry, but there's no segues in this because everything's getting cut up anyway. So your segues are meaningless.
Oh well, just the listeners will know that it was amazing. But but no, Train to Busan is great. You know, we talked about it on the horror list, and you know, we did a review for it and everything, so people can check that out. But I mean, essentially, it's, you know, a zombie movie with zombies on a train. Which, you know, on the when you hear that description, it really doesn't sell it enough because that just sounds like, what's the point of that? Like, you know, why do we need more zombie stuff? I don't know. Who cares? But the movie is so well done. It has so much like heart. You know, you really get to know the characters and feel for them to the point where, like, you know, there's this one guy that starts off as such an asshole that you can't wait to see die that ends up becoming, like, you know, your favorite character in the movie. But then, you know, like a lot of movies that are worthwhile, you know, it's not just that though. Like the horror elements are also well done. Like, you know, the zombies are cool and they think of like fun, inventive ways to deal with them, and just super solid. You know, I think, you know, most people in the horror community, I think, have latched onto this, but, you know, if you don't like horror movies that much and you think zombies are kind of played out, I'd still say give this one a watch because it is well worth it.
Number 16 is Get Out. Get Out. That was my Elaine Bennis. Or Get Out.
Get out.
So many good Get Out lines.
Yes.
Really, truly special horror film about a subject that is very interesting. Like, it's I guess you can say, liberal racism. It's sort of about cultural appropriation, and which is not something that, like, I take, I don't know, like, I hear about, and I don't know if I really think about it all that much, but this movie does make me think about
Well,
it. And it was one when I saw, I thought, yeah, it was pretty good. Like I was sort of watching it as a horror movie
Mm-hmm.
and not as the movie that it really is, which is like a social commentary.
Joe,
And as like I thought about it afterwards, it like really climbed up the ladder of movies that I loved.
I don't think a white director could have ever made this movie. And one of the reasons why I like it a
No.
lot is that it feels like it genuinely is a voice that we haven't really gotten to hear in cinema. This particular
Oh,
point,
absolutely.
this
And
particular
it
idea
puts,
of the liberal
Go ahead.
racism of people trying to prove they're not racist and in turn being actually more like
I know.
suffocating in doing so is not something that I think anyone else would have thought of. And like, I mean, again, yeah, now I think about it more than I would have done before because, you know, this piece of art made me empathize. It gave me this window into something that I would never have understood otherwise, and that's kind of the beauty of cinema.
Yeah.
And why we should have more diverse voices in cinema, regardless of whether it be about race, gender, sexuality, whatever it is. This is an example for that. Go do it.
Yeah, it really showed us why, I mean, Jordan Peele deserves to be like a director and a screenwriter and like really, really smart.
I think in
Almost like not really horror, more like Twilight Zone horror, you know?
both of his horror movies are very Twilight Zone. I think what's funny is that in one movie he immediately went for a lot of people from that comedy guy to that horror director. Because I don't think he was a comedy guy anymore. He's that horror director, Jordan Peele, to me.
I mean, it's not just, yeah, and it's not even just a horror film. It's just so layered. And I really liked Us too. It just didn't make my list. And it's, again, proves that he's just not like a one-trick pony. Like he's got more.
Yeah.
More to say. And I'm so glad that he has a voice in Hollywood now.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't love Us as much, but I still think it's pretty solid and well made, and it's the sort of thing where I'm glad that he's experimenting, even if not every experiment's not going to turn out as good as each other, but like I'm glad he's experimenting with these weird little ideas and trying to say something with them. And even if I don't necessarily love every part of one of them, like I did with Us, like I respect that more than I do, you know, here's reboot 10 of this thing. You know, like there's more to it than that. My number 16 is 12 Years a Slave. This is Steve McQueen's film, and a director who I'd seen his film Hunger from the previous decade, and then I saw Shame, and this was kind of his follow up to that. And obviously it's a very heavy topic. It's it's one of these things we go into. It's kind of like Schindler's List or movies like that where you go into it and you know it's going to be kind of a soul destroying time because it shouldn't really be anything else, right? I say that like a couple entries after Django Unchained, which I guess is a very different take on the subject matter. But this is your heart wrenching, more kind of grounded take on this story, and it's a true story. This is based on a real person's life, and it is emotionally crushing at times. I mean, I say times. Most of the movie's emotionally crushing. There's
It's kind of the whole point.
Yeah. And it's really easy to sum up a movie like this because ultimately this is what people went through, and this is what human beings did to one another. Ultimately, movies like this, kind of similar to war movies, it's very much like, hey, let's never let this happen again. We can't let this happen again. And this is the inhumanity of what it was, and the Hans Zimmer's score. And this is not a movie I typically associate with a Hans Zimmer type of soundtrack, but it's a very good emotional score. It's just very different from his normal work.
He's stretching those muscles a little bit.
Yeah, it has this very kind of low string kind of main emotional theme that it has. It's this kind of what I say, like a sort of deep cello kind of that comes in.
Yeah.
Really, really great stuff. Performances, of course, is great. And it's funny because the actor, the lead here, Chiwetel Ejiofor, if I'm saying his name correctly, I'm probably butchering it. But that's actually a guy that I discovered from Serenity, from Joss Whedon's movie. And he was kind of, he popped up in a couple of things like in the decade after that. But it was kind of, this was when I really saw him in the lead role. Like I was like, oh yeah, the operative from Serenity's like in this movie, and it's a different thing. A serious.
Of all the things that you go, that's what I know this guy from.
But it is though. That's what I first saw him in. Was Serenity. So, but no, 12 Years a Slave is
Powerful movie.
it's powerful. This is the best word for it. And that'll bring an end to this part of our top 50 of the decade. Do let us know what you think of these picks in the comments below. Look forward to part 8 coming soon. Like, subscribe, all the usual stuff. Get us on the Twitters at Mild_Fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the show and the channel and everything we do here, head over to patreon.com/MildFuzzTV and you can support us for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your troubles. But thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching movies, guys, and if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic immunity.